Hey, folks, today I've got a real treat for you. I have Marshall Townsend. This gentleman is the owner of, and I'm going to have to read a second, MT2Leadership Executive Coaching. The reason I have to read just a hair is because he's got a very extensive background. He's been in several decades of leadership and team building, not just in the U.S. military, but foreign militaries worldwide. He's done all the speaking, all the coaching, all the leadership. In addition to that, he's also an avid fly fisherman. Over there in the land of Boise, sword fighter, and coolest thing, he played about 45 minutes of the most realistic Call of Duty with George H.W. Bush that is humanly possible. So welcome here. Marshall, how are you today, friend?
Okay, doing good. Thank you. You wouldn't mention that about George Bush.
There's very few people. So as I'm looking through everybody else's bio, well, I like to travel and read and cook. Marshall has got like a patent on golf devices, and he's lived a Forrest Gump lifestyle, except I don't think his happened by accident. He's out there making it happen. So we could do the whole thing on just you playing a video, and I say video, a real life simulator, military simulator with George H.W.
Yeah.
So tell me, what's your background, Marshall, and kind of give us a 4-minute pitch of who you are and how you got to where you are today.
Well, my company is MT2Leadership because my name is Marshall Townsend II, so MT2,
Gotcha.
And then Leadership. Right. I started with 20 years active duty. I was an armor officer, and so I was stationed all around the world at that time for 20 years. And at the end of that 20 years, I was actually invited to come up to Idaho to train them. I was still on active duty at the time, brought to Idaho to train them. And the Adjutant General of Idaho asked me to retire and stay in Idaho and become their coach, teach, and mentor for the National Guard. And then I ended up being the coach, teach, and mentor for the entire West Coast, all the states. And I had a 50-person team that worked under me that we built here in Boise to provide coaching and simulation training and leadership training for the National Guard. And this happened during the time right after 9/11, where we were sending people overseas. So we're heavily involved in training. So after about 18 years of doing that, I decided to step out and start my own company. And that was about 7 years ago.
That training you're doing for them, that's leadership, teamwork. What is that?
It's leadership, how to run their command posts. And that's where the simulation came in. We had a simulation set up that supported that. So, and then also the leadership training, decision making, and basically it was a coaching process. One of the big things was we were teaching them how to coach because there was a heavy emphasis of that in the military.
And there should be. There's a lot of folks that are Peter principled out where they get the opportunity to lead and supervise others, and nobody's ever trained them on how to do it.
Yeah, and if anybody from the military is listening, if you've ever done an after action review, an AAR, that is the foundation of a coaching process, because this is where you put the responsibility, the ownership of the training on the individual, and you ask leading questions to get them to tell you what they did instead of you trying to tell them, what they were good at. And during the course of that, that's where back when I was on active duties, when I worked with DARPA for a very short amount of time as an advisor to them, and they were building three-dimensional, the first generation three-dimensional wargaming worlds, kind of like Call of Duty, like you described. And that's where the Vice President of the United States, George H. Bush, came in. Reagan was still in office. He came in, and we put him in a simulator. And I was supposed to have 10 minutes with him. It turned into 45 because we were just driving around blowing up stuff.
And he was having a ball.
Yeah, the Secret Service was not happy that we shut the door to the simulator and they couldn't cut.
God, I could imagine if you got in there with a W, you'd probably still be in there. He would have never gotten out.
Yes, he was having a good time.
So tell me, so you finish that up and you start your own thing. What does that look like?
Well, I started my own business where I'll tell you what, the best way to describe this is what really pisses me off is that the amount of time. I hate to say that. That's
perfect.
The longer I stay, when I first was hired under this contract to be the government contract to be working as a coach, it was small companies that were holding the contract. And as it went along, it grew into larger corporations, General Dynamics, Northrop Grumman. And there kind of came a point in time when there was less of a focus on the customer, or less of a focus on my team and what they were doing. And I was being limited my ability to coach because they were seeing it as a limiting process. So that really upset me. Instead of pissing me off, that upset me.
Yeah.
And then what broke my heart is that we saw my employees and myself so committed to the job of deploying these guys overseas. My parents passed away. I got divorced. There was a lot of things in my life that upset. And I watched that in my employees too. And that was start breaking my heart. I mean, that was tearing me apart. And that's when I realized that not only was I going through that, I see a lot of companies and startup solopreneurs that are going through the exact same process in the world. So I stepped out of that and decided I would take all my learning and go out and start helping companies learn how to get better customer engagement, their employee engagement, and build companies that allow them to, grow their dream or reach their dreams without having to sacrifice their lives. And that's why I coach. That's my passion for coaching.
What year was this where you made that pivot?
I made that pivot in 2015. Is that right?
Okay.
Yeah, 2015. So I left active duty in 2019. So what I said, 16 years later, I made the pivot and started my own business.
So give us an idea. You're 2015, 7 years in. What does MT2 Leadership look like? What do you do?
I work with a lot of solopreneurs. I work with small businesses, and I've done a mix between small and large companies where you got 5 to 10 employees or 50 to 500 employees in that company. So I will work with the CEO to start with, and then I'll start working with maybe their sales team, or they'll work with their staff or members of their organization to help them build a team, do team building.
So what does that look like? Let's say I've got our Charles Alexander, and I have an explainer video business, and I've got 5 people under me, and I know that I need help, but I'm sure on the average bear does not know what they need. What's the process look like?
Okay. Well, and the other thing is on this is when I made this jump and started my business, I also became a John Maxwell team certified coach. So I'm under the Maxwell Leadership Certified Program. So there's a lot of tools there that I can bring in to include Maxwell's DISC assessment process. So I normally will start the process. We'll do a DISC to see what type of personality you are, see who you are. And then I'll do that DISC with each of the key leaders in that organization to see kind of if they're in the right match for the positions they're in. And that kind of becomes a foundation where we can begin a conversation, start talking about how that company works together. And that gives me a real good insight to how, the people are bouncing off each other, right. And then also how they see their customers when they come in the front door. And then from there, we would go into the process. We would meet as a coaching. We would meet for an hour every other week and have what we call the coaching conversation, where my process is, the coaching process is, I don't come with any answers, but I come with the questions. And I'm designed to get you to start talking and tell me where you want to go. What are your dreams that are going to build your company? I had this with the military, is that I would come in a general officer like in Alaska or something, where I'd be brought in to work with them, and they would say, "Marshall, stop asking me questions. I know you know what I need to do. Just tell me what I need to do."
Right.
And I would say, no, you can't do that, because if we do that, then you need to put my name on the rock outside, and it'll be my command, not your command. Right. So I'm going to lead you into this. And same way with any company, I'll do the same.
Yeah. No, and I apologize. I'm jumping in there, but
no.
What I do is not like what you do. I've done business coaching for 15 years as a small business development center, and for the first 10 or so, that was always the mistake I made. I was going very tactical with everybody because they came to see us. They wanted the X and O's handed to them, and then you'd see a handful execute and the rest just fall off a cliff. And then it took me forever to think more like Marshall would think. We've got to ask them more questions. They've got to understand the who, what, and why. And if they don't, all the technical stuff doesn't matter, right?
And there's that part where you got to be patient with them, and sometimes there's got to be silence in the room while you've asked the question, and I have to resist myself to try and answer for them. You know, it's okay. Just sit there, and they've got to think through that.
In it. Yeah.
But once they start coming up with their own answers, and they make this shift from where they're no longer looking to outside people for answers or solutions or a grade or getting an evaluation outside themselves, and they learn to empower them from within, the game changes, where they start coming to the sessions ready to talk about things. They start showing up, prepared to go to the next level. And instead of looking backwards, now they're looking forward. And that's the real power. When I see that transformation in them, we can really start growing that company.
And that framework looks like you getting to know them, doing the disc. I assume more than not, a lot. Are you on site or is this online? Is it a combination?
I've done a combination. Majority has been on site, but I have also done Zoom calls. In fact, I have a couple that are in Europe where we do coaching sessions every other week with them by Zoom.
So in looking at this, if we go to LinkedIn right now, we go, Google, that's my term for everything. Google it. If we search for coaches, as many of you will know, you'll find all the coaches in the world for everything under the sun. And I'm pro coaching, but how do you set yourself apart from another leadership or teamwork coach?
I bring a couple things. One, I've got the John Maxwell tools that I get to bring in.
Right. Those are very good.
So that not only do when I'm working with an organization or we're working on the coaching process, I may find that we may need to do some team building exercises. So we might do the leadership game, the John Maxwell leadership game for communications, for sales, or for leadership. And then we might do a mastermind workshop or some sort of teaching events that I can bring in, maybe on the 15 laws of growth, the 21 laws of leadership.
Right.
Everybody communicates, few connects. Bring those books or that material to the table to help stretch this company so they can grow. Not just the CEO, but the entire team. So that's a big thing that I can bring to the table.
Sure.
And then also I'm bringing my 40 plus years of service of working with large organizations. I commanded in Desert Storm way back in the day, and then up through the ranks. There's a lot of experience that I get to bring in working with people and how to add value to people in how to create that connection with an organization, which I think is so important to growing a successful and vibrant organization that's going to increase your bottom line, increase income for you.
So you're also doing some keynote speaking?
I do keynote speaking. I've got a couple that I do my Mark Your Ball speaks, and then I've got a conversation with the mountains one I talk about. Both of them are all about growth and growing yourself because it goes back to growth. If the leader, you're not willing to grow, then the people around you will not grow, and neither will your organization. So those are probably my two favorite keynotes that I do.
When you say marking the ball, that's a golf metaphor?
That's a golf metaphor. Yes.
Gotcha.
Yes.
So in looking at how you structure or run your business, first and foremost, and this is a bit of a transition, how do you market your business? How do you get people to find out who you are? Where does your work come from? How are you doing that?
Well, I tell you, that's an interesting point, because 7 years ago, when I walked out of the corporate world, I knew none of this. I knew nothing. In fact, everybody I knew was either in the military or in these corporate entities, and I didn't even know anybody in my hometown, really. So I had to start from ground zero. So I started networking, going to network. So I just dirty boots approach. Get out there, start shaking hands, and going to networking events and learning how to network, and learning how to create that 60 seconds that talks about my passions, about why I do what I do.
Your elevator pitch.
My elevator pitch. and then learning how to sell. That was the other thing. Is, in fact, there was a moment of time when I went out and sold cars here in Boise because I wanted to learn how to sell, because that was something I didn't have, and that was putting my head in the lion's mouth. But I actually did. I did fairly good.
No better way to learn.
Yeah, it was. I did fairly good at that because I learned that people don't buy from companies and organizations; they buy from people. People buy from people. So if you can establish a connection and you can go the extra mile and kind of create a 5-star experience for that customer, they are much more likely to close business with you and do business with you. In fact, after I left selling cars, my cell phone rang for 6 months, where people were calling, giving me referrals of people they knew they were going to send to the showroom to buy from me. Sure. And I was like, hey, I've already started my coaching business now. But that connection is so important.
So we went through the pandemic. Networking was kind of sidetracked. What were you starting to do then, and what are you doing now that might be more, digital or anything else?
Well, it was interesting that I'd already jumped into the Zoom world and was doing things like on podcasts and doing recordings in studio. I'm kind of in my studio, my home studio here, which I built about 3 or 4 years ago now. So I was already in this realm. So it was very easy to step into the Zoom world and get really comfortable with that. So this also, instead of just being local, this is where it brought me to where now I can say I'm coaching people in Europe. I've had conversations on East Coast, West Coast, people in Australia that I've worked with. So I've widened my base by having the worldwide platform that probably would not have happened if COVID had not created that bubble that we need to get out of. But it's still a balance between being able to use the Zoom, being able to do things like this, and at the same time being out, shaking hands, and meeting people at networking events. So basically, that means a lot of word of mouth, and also being present on social media.
What social platforms do you use?
Instagram is probably one of my favorites because I love telling stories. And if anybody's following me, my Instagram, you'll see that I'm doing a set of what's called IMs. I'm doing 90 days of IMs, which is a storytelling line for me that I'm working on. And then the extension is that I've written these IMs, which I've realized I've written a book or a couple books. So that's the next step, is the transition to the storyline from the books. But also, so LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, I'm on Tumblr. I want to jump into TikTok, but not in a silly way. I want to go in more professional. I just don't have the hair to do the TikTok right. So.
I hear you. I'm still on LinkedIn for that very reason. But for anybody watching, what you're talking about doing on Instagram, and I see a lot of resistance for other people. They only want to network. They only want to, ironically, especially from coaches, they only want to stay inside their comfort zone, which is about this big. Yet they're coaching everybody else and I'm expanding my arms like you can see them to be a mile wide. And that's one of the things coaches love to coach, and they're good at it, but not many are like doing what you're doing and willing to get out there and put their face as the name of the franchise, so to speak. I have people all day long that will say, hey, can you make the phone ring? I said, no, I can't make the phone ring. That's not what we're doing. God, do you even want those kind of clients? What you need to be doing is what you're doing is storytelling. And I'll put that trumps everything else. We love to spout out facts and figures, but a story that, how you worked with a client and what the results were, even if it was just a case study, makes the most sense in terms of engaging somebody. That's how they're going to know, like, and trust you.
Absolutely. We had a networking event yesterday. We had a visitor that we were going to bring to our event, and I got a message from him the night before. He says, I'm out of business cards. I'm not going to come tomorrow. I'll get more business cards and I'll come next week. And I wrote him back and said, I don't want to meet your business card. I want to meet you. You're the very best business card in the world for yourself. Come and, hand it out in a scrap of paper. Who cares?
Yeah.
But meeting you in person and being able to connect with you
Yeah.
is where the power is. So
I just had a networking event where I had a coach show up, brought a stack of business cards, and we even made a bet beforehand because he was talking about, well, where's your card? And I had literally left mine in my office and was totally uninterested in going and getting them. And he said, well, everybody will be here. I said, I'll tell you what, bet you $10 that there's somebody without a business card, not just somebody, half of somebody. So this same coach, super nice guy, brought 24 boxes of donuts, was going to meet and greet. As soon as everybody started showing up, realized very quickly he was one of the very few that legitimately had a business card. Everybody else was just connecting through online. So, let's connect here on LinkedIn or wherever else. And bless his heart, super sharp guy, nice, but he kind of sat in the corner, ate a couple of the donuts that he had, and was worried about meeting and greeting and networking. And he even admits, that's kind of one of the concerns or issues that he has. But for anybody watching, Marshall is right on the money with what he's doing.
Yeah, I'm simple. I went simple. I took my business card and glued it to my book, and then I made a QR code. So just scan the QR code. So you don't have to have a piece of paper. And that's my takeaway. If you want to connect with me, scan the QR code.
Man.
But here's a lot of things. A lot of people and coaches are so worried about trying to get their web page and get all their other things all set up.
Right.
Get good first. Get out and start meeting people. Just start working on that aspect of it, and then worry about all the other part. But don't delay because you're worried about your website, your business card.
Right.
Just get out there and start doing the work. Start asking the questions.
Perfection is the enemy of progress. So speaking of books, and I'm sure you've got several that you could refer to, and this is the part where we start wrapping up.
Okay.
What's one of your favorite books, or even what's a book you've recently read that you really like?
I'll tell you that my favorite book right now is You Are the Brand by Mike Kim. I've had the opportunity to meet Mike Kim a couple times and go to a couple of his workshops and be in some of his programs. And he just published the book, You Are the Brand, this last in December. And that is a solid book. That is a blueprint of how to create your brand and be out there in the marketing world. Mike Kim. Okay. Is the author, and it's called You Are the Brand, and it's an orange book, and it is it's probably one of the best books I've read on that.
So one more thing, we already hit on the meeting with HW there, and I'm just going to leave it wide open because anybody wants to go read Marshall's bio, it's wild. So tell me about patenting the golf tool.
Well, my swing trainer was. I have a swing trainer called the Golfer's Footprint, which I had the patent on. And, of course, I'm sold out now of right-handers. I got left-handers. Everybody I got left-handers. I'm sold out of right. But here I was out with my son. He was 5 years old at the time. I was trying to teach him to play golf. And like any young son, he's not listening to dad at all, right? So I took a piece of cardboard, and I drew an arrow on it and said, all I want you to do is follow this arrow. Okay, just swing, follow this slightly turned arrow. Here's the circle to put the ball. We'll put the ball right there on it and just do that. So then I shut up and I stood back. And he immediately started swinging down that swing path and just launching the balls to the point where I said, get out of the way. Get out of the way. What are you doing? How come you're hitting them straight and I can't hit them straight? So then I realized I had that something, so I took it to a local pro, and he said, where could I buy one of these? And it was just in a cardboard design, and I said, hold that thought. Filed the patent, and then that swing trainers have been at the Masters, the Open, the British Open, the Senior Open. It's been used by winners of those tournaments on the Golf Channel giving lessons. So it's been out in the market for about 20 years. So it's been fun having that out there.
So what does it look like? It's just a thing with a giant arrow in it?
Yep, it's a hitting board. If you go to golfersfootprint.com, you'll see it. But it's really – and do I have one? I got one.
Show me, yeah.
I got to have one. There you go.
Of course you
do.
It's
basically – there's the fundamental. There's your arrow. Right, and you're just swing down it. And then it's got the paths on there that show you how to hit a draw and how to hit a fade. Or what causes you to slice or your ball. But basically, you see the foundation. So I drew that red arrow, just that arrow on a piece of cardboard, and put a circle on it and said, son, just do this. And boom, start immediately hitting the ball.
I need to know when you get the right-handers back in, because I'm the world's worst golfer, and I have been teaching my 9-year-old son, which is making him the second worst golfer. So I need that. And Marshall, how can somebody find you?
Well, you can find me at any of the social media platforms with MT2Leadership. And you can also find my website, which is marshalltownsend.com. MT2Leadership.com also takes you to the same website. And then there's a place where you can also sign up for my 30 days of positive thoughts and quotes. And that's a good way to get into my mailing list if you want to be able to follow me and see what events are coming up, where I'm speaking, etc. Or just through that platform, send me a note.
Good deal. Marshall, I appreciate it, friend.
I really appreciate the opportunity to be on the show.
Well, hey, man, anytime. So you have a wonderful day there in Boise.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.